Hello, I am Christy Nicholas, and the author of the award-winning Druid's Brooch series, as well as Time Tourist Outfitters and Past Storm and Fire. And I'm here today to do an interview with Elaine Dodge, author of the New York Literary Magazine award-winning novel, Harcourt's Martin. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Now, what inspired you to write Harcourt Martin?
I'd always been interested in the idea of arranged marriages and had been playing around with that idea for a while. And then I remembered that many years ago, I'd seen an old TV series called Here Come the Brides. And so I did a bit of research and I discovered that the brideships were actually a thing. So then I tried to work a way to put both ideas together. So although in my book, the hero buys his wife off the bride ship, so it's not quite an arranged marriage, it has the same kind of problems where they neither of them know each other at all and are suddenly married and have to now deal with the outcome of that.
Absolutely. What sort of process do you use? Are you a planner, a plotter, a little bit of both?
I'm a little bit of both. When it's short stories, which I do write a lot of, and I've actually just published a book called Lethal, which is an accumulation of 3 years of short stories. When I'm writing those, I do tend to pants. I may start with one line or a vague idea, but I usually just sit down and start writing. Mm-hmm. So with the short stories, I'm part of a challenge called the 12 Short Stories in 12 Months challenge. And the lady that runs that gives you the prompt and the word count and the deadline. And you're supposed to write exactly to the word count and you can only post on the deadline.
That sounds really hard to match a perfect word count.
Yeah, it is. But I'm a content creator when I'm not writing. So I'm used to writing blogs and website copy where you do have to work to exact word counts. I get paid by the word, so it's got to be exact word counts. So, and I also, because of that experience, I'm very used to the way a certain number of words look on the page. So I can tell when I've got to start wrapping up or when I've got to get to the conclusion of the story pretty quickly. I very seldom go over my word count by more than about 10 words, and then I've got to just edit those out. Yeah. So I'm used to that. So when it comes to short stories, I'm a pantser, but when it comes to novels, I'm very much of a planner. I plan every scene in every chapter. Not detailed. It could just be one line, like he meets Joe at the saloon. That will be all it is. And then that way I know who I can't bring in, like the dog too soon, or this character too soon, or I can't kill off that character too soon because they're coming in another chapter. So I know what I can say and what I can't say, but I pants the chapter based on the prompt, if you like, of that one line.
Sort of like a scene list.
Yes.
Just a short description of, like in the old chapter titles in Dickens novels, in which Jerry met Sally.
Yes, exactly that kind of thing. Yeah. So it really helps me. I did one book, the book I now have to get back into, because the 3 books, including the short story, are now back up on Amazon. So I need to get back to this story. This story was a steampunk novel, and I decided to just write by the seat of my pants and see what happened. And what happened was a nightmare. So now it's in draft 4. And I still have to fix it. So I will never be doing that again.
I have had similar experience with pantsing.
Really?
Yes. Yeah, I'm not a fan of pantsing myself. I do almost the same exact as you do.
Oh, okay.
Seamless. I start with a synopsis and write out about 2 or 3 pages, and then I make a scene list from that, and then write each scene as they come. I might change them.
Yeah.
Yeah, one scene might become 8, and 8 might become 1. I might add a character that didn't show up originally, and she kind of takes over. Or
okay,
it happens.
Yes, yeah, it does happen. I did that in my sequel to Harcourt's Martin, which is called Heart of the Mountain, and I had a character get bumped into by my hero's daughter, And I thought, oh, I actually like her. She's only in for like 3 sentences, but I like her, so I've made a note of her, and she's going to appear in book 3.
Very nice.
So
Perfect.
that's good, yeah.
I had a sorceress grandmother show up out of nowhere that I had no
Okay.
idea was going to be there, but she kind of directed the second half of the book.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
So what is the most difficult part of research for you, and do you enjoy it? And do you do all your research first and then write, or a little bit along the way, or some of both?
What I do when I'm writing my scene list, I have another column with things to research. So then I can do as much of that research as I can to start with, but then, like characters, your research pops up in the middle of the book and you go, oh, I need to research that. Because I like to pop in little bits of information that are not actually necessary to the book at all. Like, for example, yes, it does. Mm-hmm. So in Heart of the Mountain, he gets a letter, and on it is a stamp. So I had to research when did stamps, I had a vague idea about stamps, but what kind of stamps were in play in Canada or in America at that time, because the letter comes from America. What would it have been? How much would it have cost? All that kind of, that's a lot of it's my own personal information, but I was able to put in the brown 10-cent Thomas Jefferson stamp, which just, it's just a little thing that I kind of like, oh, if I was reading this book, I'd go, I know something.
I have researched what type of native flower would be growing on an Irish hillside in the 10th century.
Yep, I've done that too. We sound like we write very much the same.
So what was something that you discovered in your research that has surprised you?
The one thing that I've never forgotten is how to milk a cow, because I've never milked a cow. And the movies always have it a certain way, and you can never trust the movies. And the movies are kind of like Wikipedia. They give you an idea, but then you need to go deeper into research to find out what really happened. Mm-hmm. So I found, at the time I was working for a wildlife documentary filmmaking company, and one of our clients was National Geographic. Wow. And they are very strict on research. You cannot give them Wikipedia as a source at all. And one of the gentlemen that I worked with very briefly, he had done a documentary on the pioneers in America. And he'd sourced all these original leaflets that they would give to people who were going west, who had come from towns, big cities, and who didn't have a clue. And one of these leaflets was about how to milk a cow. And so I used that. That was awesome. And it turns out you're supposed to have 2 buckets, a wooden one for the milk, mm-hmm. and a metal one for the water that you clean the cow with, because you have to clean her udder before you can start milking. Otherwise, if stuff from the udder, mud or whatever,
they've been lying in the grass and doing whatever,
and your milk's ruined. So I had to do that. But I must admit, in modern times, I've never seen a wooden milk churn.
No.
I only see the metal milk churn. So I'm like, well, you know what? It was true for then, according to this pamphlet, so I'm going with that. So that was surprising.
Because whenever I think of milking in movies or TV, I hear the metal, the milk hitting the metal, that ding.
Exactly.
Ding, but
exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. You're like, who knows?
So you're re-releasing your book, which means you have new cover art. Tell me about that.
Okay, so yes, I am re-releasing Harcourt's Martin. It went through 3 different covers. So the first cover, I felt forced into, because I was currently at that time with a publisher, and they had a deadline and they needed a decision, and they didn't want to do the kind of cover I wanted. Right. So I said, yes, okay, that's fine. But I really didn't like it. I mean, it was nice and it was pretty, and it was the lady who did it did a really good job, and she worked really hard on it, and she worked really hard to try and please me and the publisher. So, kudos to her for having done that. But it was very chocolate boxy, and my book's not chocolate boxy. It's also not a bodice stripper, but it's not chocolate box. So, Then a little bit later, I saw some covers of books that I really liked. So I contacted that author, and she said, well, she was actually trying to set up a cover design company, so she would do mine for free.
Very nice.
To get that going. And we tried not to break too far from the first cover in theme, in idea. So in the first book, there was a wolf and a mountain and a lake. So we had the same thing, but it was much more realistic.
Right.
It was more gritty. It was like what you would see if you went there, as opposed to what
As opposed to a travel brochure.
Exactly. So that was really nice. And I wasn't opposed to having a human on the front, but I was still with my publisher, and they were like, no, he's got to be good looking, and he's got to be, they didn't actually say his shirt had to be half off. But I was like, I don't want a good looking person on my cover. Although I must admit, the person who is on my cover now is good looking, but
but he's a rugged good looking as opposed to a pretty good looking.
Yes, exactly. So I kind of still felt that there was a compromise I was being asked to make that I wasn't prepared to make with the person, so we left the person off. And now that I've gone as an independent author, I've realized that a person is a good idea, but now I was able to put the kind of person in the kind of clothing in the way I wanted on the cover. So that's what it is now, it's the second cover with a person put on it. And what's really nice is that I really like the second cover. So we're using that as a background for all the books in the series. So the only thing that will change is the title and the person. And the person will always be in the same place. So I'm really, really pleased about my cover art now. And I'm also really pleased because I did it.
Excellent. So it's a good feeling of accomplishment, isn't it?
It is, all around.
And since you mentioned it, tell me about the sequel.
Okay, the sequel is called Heart of the Mountain. And that picks up, the maths is quite bad, picks up about 6 years, 5.5 to 6 years after the end of the first book. So their daughter is now 5.5, and stuff has changed slightly, but not dramatically. So in the second book, we follow their story, but we also encounter new characters and re-meet old characters from book 1. My books are filled with characters. They're very Dickensian in their character count. I'm not really a 3-character book or 4-character book person. I like epic stories, lots of people, lots of drama. So that's
when is the release date for the prequel or sequel? Sorry,
the sequel is it's on pre-order now, and release date is tomorrow.
Oh wow, fantastic!
Is it tomorrow?
What is that date in case people are watching this video later?
So it's not tomorrow, it's the 25th. So that's Saturday. Probably the wrong day to do a launch, but I was juggling a lot of stuff. So that's launching on the 25th, and my short stories is launching tomorrow, and that's also on pre-order.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So on your first book, tell me a bit about your main character. What do they want? Why can't they get it? Give me some backstory.
Okay. So my main character is Luke Harcourt. He's the hero of the story. So there's 2 main characters, Luke Harcourt and Hope Booker. Hope is the woman he buys. So Luke Harcourt is an ex-Navy captain from the American Civil War. He was in the American Navy. And he's got a lot of nightmares about what happened during the war and the fact that his wife died and he feels responsible for her death. So he's trying to escape all of that. And so he goes as far away as he can, which is British Columbia in Canada. And he wins a mountain in a poker game. Sure. And so he's living on his mountain, and for the first time, he's finally finding peace.
Nice.
No more nightmares. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, paradise. And he's growing apples, which is a very far cry from the war. And also, I didn't want to make him a cowboy or a rancher, or he needed to be of the era, but not the same as everybody else.
Cliché.
Yeah, not a cliche. So he's an apple farmer, and he goes into town to buy supplies, and he sees this woman on this bride ship, and he realizes she's not going to survive because the owner of this particular bride ship isn't a good man. He's basically selling the woman, and if they don't get sold, he puts them to work in his brothel, from which they will never escape. So he buys her on impulse, and now he's stuck with her, and he's like, what have I done? I just wanted to be left alone, peace and quiet, grow some apples. My life was perfect. Now I've got this woman I don't know from Eve, and I now have to sleep in the barn because he's also a gentleman, so he's sleeping in the barn. And he's promised never to touch her because he could see that she was afraid of being raped. So he was like, lady, I don't want a wife. I don't want you. I'm sleeping in the barn. Be at peace. So now, because it's an historical romance, he does fall in love with her, and he's like, now what do I do? Because I promised I would never touch her. If I make a move, she could freak out. I have no idea how she feels about me. And that could make life on the mountain even more difficult, which I don't want.
Right.
But I do want her. And she's feeling the same because she's going, oh no, I've fallen in love with him. But he said he didn't want me. So what do I do? So they've both got this, but it's not just a simple romance story. It's a very slow growing romance.
Mm-hmm.
And in between, there's a lot of drama. Indians,
Drama.
Wolves, bears, whitewater, kidnappings.
Yes.
Bad people.
Bad people, good. So you mentioned your sequel. What are your plans for the rest of the series?
I am finding that with this series, the ideas are also quite slow growing. So because I've got a big cast of characters, I would like to continue to introduce new characters for each book, but also touch base with the old characters. So some of the old characters will have stories that we'll discover. New characters will come in with their own stories, and Luke and Hope will have their continuing story that touches on all of these, or all of those will impinge on their story. So at the moment, I've got an old character story. I've got two old character stories, and that's about it. I don't really know what's happening with Luke and Hope enough for a book, so I'm just making notes.
So do you have any other projects in the work? You mentioned your steampunk novel.
Yes, so that is in draft 4, and I need to fix that mushy middle. I know.
We all dread the mushy middle.
Yeah, we all do. So I had some beta readers read the book in its in the 3rd draft, and they were like, this whole section of the book, you don't need. I'm like, oh, I do. I really do need that. I need that. But then when I was going through it again, I went, oh, this is why I need that. Because one of these characters actually needs to be one of the most important characters at the end of the book. Mm-hmm. So I can keep that. So now I have to fix that and get to my ending again. The ending's not going to change dramatically, but building that character in that is now an important character, building him more up during the middle is what I need to be doing. So there's that. And I'm also writing a book called The Queen's Executioner, and that was based on a story of my brother's. So, and that's going to be a much different book. It's contemporary, it's short, 200 pages max, lots of action, and it involves the British royal family.
Is it like
which I'm not using my name, so I'm changing names, but everyone's going to read this and go, oh, you mean her. So, which is fine. That's
the
fine.
names have changed to protect the not so innocent.
Yeah. But maybe not so innocent, yes, yeah.
So your Amazon author page is at amazon.com/author/Elaine-Dodge. And that's ELAINE-DODGE. And I will be posting that in the YouTube video so that people can see that. And your website link is elainedodge.com, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Anything else that you'd like to say before we sign off? Thank you very much for being here.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I think I've probably spoken too much.
No, not at all. It's
Oh,
been
good.
delightful.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. No, thank you. It's been wonderful having this time with you, and thank you so much for having me.
All right, well, that's a sign off from me.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.